Amen, amen. Man, I feel it now. Can we just say hey real quick to our online church who's hanging out with us this morning? Um, so glad that you are here today. I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that we're here together to do this because I need it, you need it, we need it together. Our online crew needs it today. Hey, I'm going to just dive right into this. I want you to just focus on this verse today. This is kind of the theme of where we're going to be at for today. Ephesians 4:32, be kind and affectionate towards one another. Has God graciously forgiven you? Thank you. Then graciously forgive one another into the depths of Christ's love. I want to talk to you today for the few minutes that I have, the rest of the few minutes that I have today about kindness. Now, not typically a theme that we would dive into, but something that it's something that we need to talk about. We're there as a whole church today. Everybody's dealing with this issue of kindness. And listen, it's not, it's the simplest expression of the love of Christ. Let's just put it like that. Kindness is the simplest expression of the love of Christ. And it's something that you and I have to be consciously aware of. If we're not, what happens? Like, it looks ugly. It starts looking bad if we don't have this nature of kindness about us. Now, I felt like the best way to deal with this is to just give you some stories maybe. And the thing that I kept coming back to as I was looking at this idea of kindness was two things. What's the difference between kindness and compassion, right? So kindness is the feeling for somebody's suffering. You know what I mean? Like, I can identify with, or I feel bad for what you're facing. That's kindness, right? And so then you do something about it. Compassion is to be able to identify with them personally. I've walked in your shoes before, right? And so I have compassion with you. And so I want to come alongside. I'm going to do this together. And so we have this idea. And what we see is that Jesus portrayed both of these. He was both kind and compassionate all the time. And so if that's our quest, if that's our idea to pursue who Jesus is, then let's look at what he does and come alongside it and say, I'm going to figure out how to intentionally put that into my life. So I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about some different ways that I've seen this fleshed out. On the receiving end, where people were kind to us, and then on the giving end, how we were able to be intentional about that with other people. One of the things we do around our dinner table, our really big dinner table at night, is when we get our 57 kids together, is we ask them, like, how did you make a difference today? And I want them to be able to integrate that into their mind, that this is something that you choose and you look for on a daily basis. And so we had somebody over for dinner. They were over just at our house one day, and it was around dinner time, and we're like, hey, why don't you just stay for dinner? And so they did, and so we did this at the dinner table, and they were like, is this a joke? Do you guys do this all the time? Just for me right here, right now? I'm like, no, this is something we do every single day. We ask them at dinner time every day, how did you make a difference today? And then sometimes they're like, well, I didn't do anything. I did nothing. I did not make a difference today. And obviously, that's fine. This is a learning opportunity. We're just trying to get this mindset into our children that you can decide and determine that you're going to be a difference maker in some way, right? And it's like on so many different levels. I was excited a couple of days ago that I had gone to Kohl's to do something, probably return something on Amazon, right? Because they get that Amazon thing, return it at Kohl's, and so I've done that like 1,000 times now, and so I was there doing that. It was like, you know how like all these things happen at the, like, I don't want to say the worst possible moment, but you're not ready for it. So I was ready to jump on my truck, get in, get out, right? Get done before I buy something else. You with me? You know how this works? And like before I even shut my truck off, this woman comes up and she's standing right outside my car door, and I'm like, this is interesting and new, and she's like, hey, my car died, and she blamed it on her son. My son's been listening to music in the car, and the car died. And she said, can you jumpstart my car? And so I'm like, yeah, sure, I can figure that out, no problem. And so I got to go home that night, and I was like, as soon as we sat down, I'm like, who has a different story? Because I do. I want my kids to understand this and move forward with it. But my wife is like the champion of giving stories. In fact, this week she was at Aldi's. Were you with her when she was at Aldi's? No, you weren't. Somebody was with her, but she was walking around the grocery store, and she saw this lady who was like painfully trying to figure out, do I have enough money for what I'm trying to buy, right? And so she recognizes this and sees it, and so she does her shopping thing and goes up, and she's like, she just feels this, I need to do something. I need to figure this out. I don't know. And there's always that tension of, am I right in what I'm feeling right now? Am I going to do something that's going to make somebody else embarrassed, whatever? So she's like, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. So she buys a $50 gift card and goes back, and she's like, hey, I just feel like you should have this. And the lady's like, why me? Why would you do this for me? Why would you whatever? And like, and she's like, I don't know. I just felt like you needed to have it. And she just walks away. And that's it. And like, there's just these elements of kindness that we get to have on a consistent daily basis. I'll be honest, there's another one that happened to me this week. I got to go to visit somebody in the hospital this week. And these hospital visits, when I first started as a pastor, I just despised them. I just couldn't figure out how to identify. I'd never done this before. I'd never been in this position, and it's so, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable state to go and visit somebody in the hospital. And now I've come to the point where I'm like, yes, somebody's in the hospital. I get to go visit somebody, and they're like time of desperation. And so I had to go all the way up to Hershey, and so I know that's not really far for people like Rich Cordell who drive everywhere all week, but for me, that's a long way. It's a long day, and so I went, and I got up early, and I went to Hershey, and I told these people I was coming, and I went in, and I was there for like 2.5 hours, and which is a long time for me, but I just got to sit and talk to this woman who is watching her husband go through some stuff right now, and it was like I walked away encouraged. Like, how does that happen? You walk away from a position where you're just trying to be kind and compassionate to somebody else in their time of desperation, and I walked away like, this is amazing. I'm so encouraged right now. How does that happen? I don't get it. And then she texted me later on that day. She's like, you totally made my day. All I did was show up and talk to her. I even offered to bring her lunch. She's like, no. Like, it gets infectious where you step into an intentional element of kindness and you realize how much it does for you. I'll be honest with you, there's other times on the receiving end of kindness where people have been kind to us, and you're just like, why would you choose that? Why would you do what you did for me? I remember this one season of life when Chris and I, we were missionaries, we were traveling, and we had left on a trip that was going to be forever long, 11, 12 weeks that we were going to be traveling on the road. We were literally homeless at the time. Everything we had was in our car, and we probably looked that way. But we were totally like on faith at this moment. We did not have enough money to be able to sustain the travel that we were doing and to the ministry that we were trying to propose. It was all like a faith moment. And so this was right after Christmas, and we left in like the second week of January, and we were going to Florida. And we had a couple meetings in Florida that we needed to be at, and the first one was it was right outside of Orlando, this little tiny church. And we went to this church on this Sunday, and we were supposed to do some things on Sunday night. And I will never forget this little tiny congregation, probably half of this first section right here. They took an offering for us that day that was over $2,000. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away. We literally had nothing, and we're wondering, like, where are you going to sustain us? How are you going to do this? And they gave us this offering, and then the next day, we're sitting there, like, just mesmerized of this God moment that we had just seen God walk into. And this lady comes to our hotel. We were in a hotel this church had put us up in, which rarely happens. And this lady knocks on our door, and she just said, I just felt like you needed some clothes. Because I'm like, we look homeless? Is that what the deal is? She brings in like bags of clothes that she had bought for my wife and I. Like, totally not even knowing the size of clothes that we wear. But I'm like, what is this? Like, why did the Lord put that on somebody else's heart and mind to just encourage us with kindness? It's just amazing, and it's infectious, and you want to turn around and do something else that's kind for somebody else. And thus our question to our kids all the time, did you make a difference today? How did you make a difference today? How did it make you feel? What do you want to do tomorrow to make a difference in somebody's life? Man, this stuff is infectious, and I want to infect you with a desire to be kind to somebody else. Not saying at all that you're not, but with the idea of, what if we could just do a little bit more? What if we could just be a little bit more kind? And the problem is, honestly, church, is that you and I are just frankly too busy. Am I right? We don't have margin to be kind and compassionate to people. We don't. I've got stuff to do. I remember another time, a humiliating story for me. It had to do actually with the start of our Ship campus. Wednesdays are always crazy for me. It's conversations all day long. In fact, this last Wednesday was like a 9 a.m. meeting, a 10 a.m. meeting, a 12 o'clock lunch where Tucker and I got to find some tacos, and then a 1 o'clock meeting. I think I had a 2 o'clock meeting, I had a 4:30 appointment, and then a 7 o'clock meeting here at this church. It was just crazy all Wednesday, and like every Wednesday is like that. I go home at the end of Wednesday, and I'm like, I don't even know my name. I don't even remember where I live. It's that kind of Wednesday for me. And this was just another one of those Wednesdays. I had a lunch appointment, I think, with Chase. We were getting some tacos, me and Chase, long time ago. And as soon as we were done, I had another appointment back in my office I had to get to. And I was standing outside of Chipotle because that's where you get good tacos around here. And I was like checking messages on my phone, and this guy walks up to me, and he was like, I need some help. And I was like, I have no money. I was like, I have no money. I put my hands up, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what I feel sometimes, right? And he was like, he was just very desperate in need. And he said, he hands me his phone, and I took off running. No, I'm kidding. He handed me this phone, and he said, I need to get to the Walmart. I need to get to Walmart. I was like, really? It's that bad? There's a Target right here. It's way better. No, I'm kidding. He starts in this story, and he was like, I have to walk to the Walmart in Shippensburg because I have to get on a bus. I'm like, do you know where we are? That's a long way. And he's like, my nephew's just been hit by a car. And I got to get on a bus to get to Harrisburg right now. And, in that moment, you're like, well, good luck. You know what I'm saying? I wish you well. I was shocked by hearing this guy's story. And so he hands me his phone because he wants me to put in the directions so that he can walk from Norland Avenue to the Walmart in Shippensburg. That's a long way, like 11 miles. So I did, and I left. I did, and I left. I'm telling you the truth. Like and then as soon as I got in my truck, the Lord was like, you are such a hypocrite. You think you're so important and so busy. The guy sitting in waiting in your office, he can wait a little while longer. Deal with this. So I had to humbly chase the guy down, and that looked really attractive. Literally, I'm like, I see the guy walking, and I'm like driving through parking lots trying to get close to him, and I was at Red Robin at that point, and he's walking on the sidewalk, and I'm in the Red Robin parking lot, and I passed two ladies that were standing in the parking lot, like finishing up their conversation, and I jump out of my truck, and I was like, hey, dude, and they're like, oh my gosh! And I finally got the guy's attention. I was like, get in my truck, I'll take you as far as I can. And so I did. I got him all the way, like halfway up Philadelphia Avenue, and I was like, this is as far as I can go. He's like, that's awesome. And I remember this day because Scott was following me. And he was like, what is going on? He called me. Do you remember that? It was hilarious. He's like, I was afraid you were going to die. I was like, no, just helping this guy. His brother died, or his brother got hit by a car, nephew, whatever it was. I don't remember the story, but he was panicking. He was freaking out. And all I had to do was just take a moment to be kind. It cost me nothing. It meant everything to him and me afterwards. We get this story from 2 Samuel where we're looking at David and David's life. And we get from 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse number 1, he says this, one day David is now king. He asked, is there anyone left from Saul's family? If so, he says this, I'd like to show some kindness in honor of my best friend, Jonathan. Now, the reality is that David owed nothing to anyone. He was king, the most powerful person in that part of the world. He didn't have to do anything to anyone. As we saw last week a little bit, Jonathan is David's best friend, Saul's son. At the end of the book of 1 Samuel, you see Saul and his son Jonathan are killed in a battle. And then they kind of just move on from there, and David becomes king I don't know how long later, time period later, and becomes king of Israel, and then becomes king of Israel and Judah, and he's well established in his throne at this point, and his kingdom, and I think there's just this moment, he's just sitting there, and he's wondering, man, how can I make a difference? You see a very unique something about somebody's personality when they ask this question, because he says, I would like to show kindness to anybody in Saul's family. Is there anybody around? Is there anybody I can find? And so they found the guy. They knew of someone that somebody was there, and they knew of who is Mephibosheth's father. Who was this? I don't even remember. Okay, that's what I thought. Jonathan's son. And so they found his son, and they knew of his son, and we get to learn a little bit about his story in 2 Samuel chapter 4, where it says, this won't be on the screen, but it says, it so happened that Saul's son, Jonathan, who had been maimed in both feet when he was 5 years old, the report of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and ran, but in her hurry to get away, she fell, and the boy was maimed, and his name was Mephibosheth. Listen, the special needs issue of this boy doesn't matter. The reality is that David just said, I want to show kindness to somebody in Jonathan's family, in Saul's family, because that's who I am. Now, he wasn't going to say that, but even in the next chapter, in 2 Samuel chapter 10, you see David say the same thing again. Is this king in another country, I want to show some kindness to him. This was who David was. He was just a kind person. It was in his nature. He was constantly looking for ways to demonstrate honor and integrity and kindness to someone else. And so the reality I want you to know is that kindness is a choice. It's something that you choose to do. And it comes back on you so many times over and over and over again. You will never regret being kind. That's a pretty sweeping statement. Listen. You have to understand me this, because there's going to be that opportunity. You're like, yeah, but Kevin. I remember there was a time in our world that I have to be careful how I frame this. We invited a single mom to come live at our home one time, and it was a desperate situation. Why else would you invite somebody to live in your home with you, right? It was. They had nowhere else to go, and 3 or 4 kids in the mix, and so we invited them to live with us. And they came from a really, really gross situation, okay? And their time with us was short, like a month, and then they moved on, went somewhere else. And like 4 weeks later, we realized that our house was like totally infested with roaches. And it came because of where they came from. And there's no fault of theirs, but this sucks for us. You know what I mean? It was terrible. I mean, did I regret my kindness because I had a roach problem? No. We got a vacation out of it. We went away for 2 days and bombed our house. It is what it is. You know what I mean? You'll never regret an element of kindness, even if it takes more from you than what you wanted to give. You will. You just change somebody's life. I want to read to you just for a minute today from James. As we kind of just frame this, as we wrap this up today, I want you to understand this. Unintentional indifference, in other words, I don't care. Unintentional indifference is more powerful than intentional kindness. Think about this for just a minute. Let it sink in. Unintentional indifference is more powerful than intentional kindness. Because you don't realize you're being unintentional about it. You don't realize that you're teaching your people in your circumference that you don't care. Until there comes a moment when you want them to care and they don't. Does that make sense? It takes opportunity upon opportunity of you being intentionally kind to reproduce a season of unintentional indifference. It takes forever, and you will regret it for a long time. James had this to say. He said this, he says, my dear brothers and sisters, what good is it if someone claims to have faith but demonstrates no good works to prove it? It's like that moment where, how many of you, and I don't want to be critical or don't misinterpret what I'm saying, but how many of you have seen like church signs that says like, all are welcome here? You've seen this? Yes, no, maybe so. And I always kind of cringe when churches put that on their like entrance sign, because what they're saying is like, we're not actually welcoming here. We just want you to think that we are. Does that make sense? If you have to say it, there's a good chance that you're not that. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe so. Show it to me. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell me that you're welcoming. Just be welcoming, and I'll tell you that you are. That's what James is saying here. He says, if you claim to have faith but demonstrate no good works to prove it, what is that? How could this kind of faith save anyone? For example, if a brother or a sister is in faith, this is not exactly what we're talking about today, is poorly clothed and hungry, and you leave them saying, hey, goodbye, I hope you stay warm and get plenty to eat. Isn't that exactly what I did with that guy when I left him and I said, good luck, see you later? I hope you get to your bus on time. But you don't provide them with a coat or even a cup of soup. What good is your faith? So then faith that doesn't involve action is phony. I guess I just want to encourage you with the idea today of, are you kind? Like, would somebody characterize you as compassionate? I mean, would you characterize yourself with that? I mean, you wouldn't wear a shirt that says, I am kind. I hope you wouldn't. But are you? I mean, if there's a question in your mind that maybe I'm not, maybe it's time for you to look for some opportunities of intentional kindness. Jesus did this in Matthew chapter 9. I just found this story. It says in Matthew chapter 9, Jesus got into a boat and returned to what he was considered his hometown, that would be Capernaum. And then some people brought a paraplegic man to him lying on a sleeping mat. They knew that he was kind. They knew he couldn't resist opportunities like this. Jesus brought this man to him. Now, it says that a little while later. Now, I get from this, I can't differentiate the time. And it sounds to me like this is the same day, okay? Like it says, a little while later, he was speaking, and an influential Jewish leader approached and knelt before him and said, "Help me. My daughter has just died. Please come and place your hand upon her so she will live again." And so Jesus and his disciples got up and they went with him. And then in the same situation, y'all know the story, suddenly a woman came from behind and touched Jesus' tassel of his prayer shawl for healing. And he has like multiple opportunities to demonstrate kindness to all these different people on the same day. And you just see him interacting with each one of them as they came along. He's like, "Yep, I'll deal with you. Yep, I'll help you. Yep, I'm there for you. Yep, I'm working with you." And we have to take a look at who Jesus is and identify with that and say, well, if that's who he was, then maybe we should be too. Let me just finish it with this one comment. What would you think if Jesus demonstrated the same kindness and compassion that you do? Would you be grateful for it? Like, would it change your life? Listen, I want to wrap this up with one thing today, because this lends itself to an opportunity we have coming up that we're actually going to release to you next Sunday, but I want to just talk about it for just a minute today. Every year, our community does what's called the Community Christmas Party. And we are partnering with the Chamber to do this. And the idea behind the Community Christmas Party is to provide Christmas for families who cannot. It's an amazing opportunity for us. And so we're going to ask you next Sunday to begin gathering some toys for these families, some Christmas presents for these families who will not get Christmas without this. This is their Christmas. It's an amazing opportunity. The coolest part about it, and this is what I so love about our community outreach team, is they look for opportunities where not only can we help them like move forward with the actual physical gift, but actually with your physical participation as well. So not only are we asking you to, I'll launch into the idea next Sunday, but we're going to ask you to bring back some stuff, but then we're actually going to ask you to be there as well. On what's the date? 19th, December 19th. You get to go, and you get to provide Christmas for these people. You get to serve them dinner. You get to just be there and walk with them and watch them and learn some of their story as they walk through a difficult season of their life. It is incredible. We got to do it last year. I think like 40 of our people from this church showed up and helped out. It was life-changing just to be there and provide Christmas for somebody who will, this is all they get. So I want you to look at that and think about it and be ready for that next Sunday, because the ask is big. It's bigger than you think. But it's an amazing opportunity for us to look and say, there's an intentional opportunity right there for our church to be kind. But here's the deal. I love it when our church gets together and collectively moves into one direction together. We can make an amazing impact. But it's even more profound and powerful when each one of our church individually decides that I'm going to be kind too. Does that make sense? So I just got to ask, how could you be kind today, this week? How could you create hey, what was the difference that you made today stories with your family, with your people, with the people in your circumference? I bet you can make a lot of kind happen. God, I want to just pray over this church today. Lord, as we seek to be, Lord, who you are and what you've called us to do and the things that you have asked us to be and just to follow, Lord, the example and demonstration that you have given to us. Never once did you say that, hey, I am kind and be kind like me. But you just showed us what you did. And in fact, that situation where John the Baptist, people come to him and they ask, are you the Messiah? And you do all these amazing things and you just say, go and tell them what you saw and heard. God, I pray that would be said of our church. And that church is an amazingly kind church because we chose to be. We got intentional about it. Lord, I just pray that the power of your Spirit would just infiltrate and affect every person in this room today to look for and desire an element, a story of kindness. In Jesus' name, amen.